Hello, and welcome back to the studio. I'm Dr. Wigo, and today I am exuberant because we are going to be talking about the new M3 processors from Apple and the computers they go into. I really am exuberant. How I'm going to do this is first I'm going to talk about the processors because there's a lot of really cool things they put into these processors. I mean really cool. And we'll talk about that, and I'll talk about the different processors. There's 3. They've never done that before. So I'll talk about the processors, and then I'll do a little analysis. I'll put a chapter stop where I'll stop and do a little analysis talking about the processors and what I think and some other ideas. Then the next chapter will be, I'll talk about the computers, the MacBook Pros and iMac that will use these new processors, and I'll run through all of those. And then again, I'll put a little chapter stop in so you can stop and see my analysis of those processors. But also I will talk about the marketing and the event and a little bit about that because that's all pretty cool too. Apple is firing on all cylinders again. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk about the processor. So the big news, technically the big news, is that they announced these at all. And in the analysis, we'll talk about that. But the big news is this is the first Apple Silicon for the Macs that is on the 3 nanometer process that we first saw just very recently in the iPhone. But unlike the M1, where they started from the iPhone processor and kind of built on it, this is a whole thing kind of from scratch with a whole lot of new stuff in it. And so this is not connected to the A17 Pro chip, except in the process size. Apple is touting this as the next-gen GPU architecture, and I kind of think they're right. First off, they've introduced this thing called dynamic caching. I've been working for computers for a lot of years. I thought it already did stuff like this, but apparently it didn't. And apparently it used to, allocate memory to the GPU. Remember, we have unified memory, which is both CPU and GPU memory. Like on the Intel machines, they've got the GPU has its own memory and the CPU has its own memory, and they share. This is a whole other thing. This dynamic caching is they constantly update real time how much memory the GPU is using so it can keep that set aside. This is especially important for people who don't have a lot of unified memory. And believe me, there's a lot of unified memory you can get. We'll get to that. So dynamic caching is the first big thing. Then Apple is leaping forward into the 2010s by bringing in mesh shading, which has been available on NVIDIA and AMD and other graphics cards. And also ray tracing, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about because it's the thing that made Cyberpunk 2077 and all those other games run so badly on most video cards because ray tracing is hard. It's now built into the GPUs on the M3 processor family. This means you end up with rendering that's up to 1.8 times faster than the M2 family and 2.5 times faster than the M1 family. By the way, Apple did a lot of this family stuff. We'll talk about that in the analysis. Just wait, it's coming. The other thing they've done is they've made the P cores are 15% faster than the M2 and 30% faster than the M1. And the efficiency cores, the little E cores, are 30% faster than on the M2 and 50% faster than on the M1. And the other big deal is the power consumption, because basically you can use half the power. The CPU and GPU will use half the power of the M3 to get the equivalent performance of the M1. And of course, then it goes on from there. And they're not done. The neural engine is 15% faster than the M2's neural engine and 60% faster than the M1's neural engine. And the media engine, which was already pretty awesome, now supports AV1 decode, which is a big thing for those of us who care about codecs and videos. Having AV1 decode is a kind of a big deal. Let's talk about each of these processors. So the M3, the base model, which by the way, typically would have been the only one announced. That's how they've been doing it. We'll talk about that in the analysis. Is an 8-core CPU, 4 and 4, 4 P cores, 4 E cores. That's 20% faster than the M2 and 35% faster than the M1. and up to a 10-core GPU, which is 20% faster than the M2 and 65% faster than the M1. That's faster. And will come with up to 24 gigabytes of unified memory on the chip. Now we move up to the M3 Pro, and now we have a 12-core GPU, 6 P cores, 6 E cores. That's 20% faster than the M1 Pro. And it comes with an 18-core GPU, which is 10% faster than the M2 Pro's GPU and 40% faster than the M1 Pro's GPU. And the M3 Pro comes with up to 36 gigabytes of unified memory. But the big daddy is the M3 Max, which is a 16-core CPU, which is more cores than have been in previous generations. And it's 12 P cores and 4 E cores, where if you notice, the ones I've been saying so far, they've been evenly split. No, this is 3-to-1 power to efficiency. So this CPU is 50% faster than the M2 Max and 80% faster than the M1 Max. So this is a huge leap forward. Huge. And it comes with up to a 40-core GPU, which is 20% faster than the M2 Max and 50% faster than the M1 Max. And here's the big news, up to 128 gigabytes of unified memory. That's a lot of memory. Okay, so I promised some analysis. Look at this chart. What I've done here is on the y-axis, we've got billions of transistors, and the x-axis is time. And so I've got 3 years on this chart, starting with the M1 released 3 years ago. The M1, the first Apple Silicon chip, came out towards the end of 2020. And almost a year later, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max came out. And then 5 months after that, we got the M1 Ultra. But only 3 months after the M1 Ultra comes the M2 processor. And then only 7 months after that comes the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips. And then 5 months after that, we get the M2 Ultra. But only 4 months after the M2 Ultra do we get the M3. And now we don't have to wait any months for the Pro and Max because they all came out on the same day. So this is a rapidly accelerating release schedule, which has a lot of implications. Remember, the rumors are going wild. The reason the rumors are going wild, and they kept saying, no, it's not. The M3 is not going to be until 2024, and this has kept going back and forth. Well, it's complicated. Fortunately, Snazzy Labs has a cool little video that I will link down below that kind of does a deep dive, and it all has to do with TSMC, the company that actually manufactures the chips, and their problems with the process, the 3-nanometer process, which is a new thing for everybody. The iPhone 15 was the first thing that had it, and now this is the second thing that has it. Nobody else has this yet. They're all working on it, but nobody's got it. And Snazzy does a pretty nice job of explaining about chip yields and all these things, and that's why the rumors was because everybody thought, well, the 3-nanometer process isn't just one process, it's a series of steps, and this first step they didn't think was going to be good enough, and so that's why they were talking about early 2024. But they made it work. But it's also why, when we get to the actual computers, they have a lot of weird configurations, and it's because as the chips come, well, Snazzy explains it better. Go watch his video. This is an amazing technological coup for Apple, and you know that's why they rushed to get this out, because they wanted to be the first, absolutely the first. Well, they are, because they're shipping like a few days from now. But let's talk about the computers. The main computers these things are going in are the MacBook Pros. I'd say the new MacBook Pros, but they're not really new. It's the same boxes with cool new stuff inside. Now, they have eliminated the 13-inch MacBook Pro with the touch bar, which everyone hated. And now there's a low-end 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M3 and not the Pro chip. It's just the regular M3 to kind of make it fair and to make it cheaper because they're eliminating the entry-level MacBook Pro. This is now the entry-level MacBook Pro. It has one less USB-C port and only supports one external monitor. So it's not a really great computer. And there's lots of videos you can go watch about comparing it to the 13-inch and how it's not really the same, but it's kind of the same. And I don't care about any of that because I didn't have one and I don't know anything about it. I've never had a MacBook Pro. Now, the 14-inch and 16 inches with the M3 Pro and the M3 Max, these are the guys. And first off, we start with 22 hours of battery life. Well, there's one model that only has, that has less, but most of them have 22 hours of battery life. That's a full day. That's amazing. Now, but like I said, it's still basically the same container that the MacBook Pros have been coming in, which is the 1080p camera, the 6 speakers, the Magic Keyboard, the Liquid Retina XDR display, which was already awesome, with 1,000 sustained nits and 1,600 peak nits in HDR, but they bumped in SDR. This used to be a 500 nit screen. Well, now it goes up to 600 nits. So they've really goosed the screen. And in the big announcement, Marques Brownlee wasn't going to upgrade until he saw the Space Black. And it's gorgeous. And they've done some sort of anodization seal on the outside, so it won't get as many fingerprints on it. It won't look like this thing with just nothing but fingerprints. But what they didn't say is that seal is on the outside of the computer, not on the part with by the keyboard where you touch it the most. So that'll still get fingerprints. Keep that rag handy. And of course, they all run the new macOS Sonoma that was announced at the WWDC back in the summer and which shipped in September. Well, that's the operating system for these new guys. But wait, there's more. They're finally updating the 24-inch iMac, which has been stuck on the M1 for, well, since it came out. But they didn't really upgrade it. It's the same machine. They're just replacing the M1 chip with an M3 chip. But of course, that's going to be up to 2 times faster. But it's still the same Magic Mouse and Magic Keyboard, which, by the way, means there's still Lightning. You still have to use USB to Lightning because the Magic Mouse and Magic Keyboard charge with Lightning, and they didn't bother to upgrade that. So let me talk about now for a minute. If you watched the Apple event, well, first, I'm sorry because I just repeated a whole lot of stuff that they said. I hope I added a little for you to make it more interesting. All of their charts, they were really pushing comparisons of the M3, M3 Pro, and M3 Max to the M1, M1 Pro, and M1 Max. Yeah, they talk about the M2, but they were really pushing the comparisons between the M3 family and the M1 family. And also with the old Intel-based Macs. Now, this was marketing, and really good marketing, because they know that the people who just bought M2 or M2 Pro or M2 Max MacBook Pros, they're not going to upgrade, except for Marques because now it's in Space Black. But most people aren't going to upgrade. But you know who might upgrade? The people who have M1 MacBook Pros. Go back and look at the chart. Their computers are now 2 to 3 years old. Because remember, the M1 MacBook Pros came out 3 years, 2020. It's a big upgrade for them. And of course, for the Intel Macs, it's a huge upgrade. And in fact, they put a lot of things in like 11 times faster than the Intel MacBook Pro. They really want to get everybody who still has the Intel chips. Remember, I've been analyzing Apple as an academic for like 25 years. And then I was a Mac journalist for 10 years before that. So I've been watching Apple for a long time. And they don't do things by mistake. Well, occasionally. But for the most part, they don't make a lot of mistakes. And this was a fabulous product launch. The fact that they kind of downplayed it and didn't make a big deal, but yet it is a big deal. Because what does that do? It focuses all the attention on the processors. And it focuses all the attention on the processors compared to not the previous generation, but the generation before that. And the generation before that, the Intel. Because those are the people they're trying to get to upgrade. Those are the people they're most likely to upgrade. Those are the people that will want to upgrade because they're getting, again, 11 times faster than the Intel. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Get the cheapest one and it's still 11 times faster than what you had. And it was consistent throughout. And then, of course, the other brilliant marketing thing they did was constantly harp on the power. Because the big problem with the PC side, with the Intel chips and the AMD chips and the NVIDIA, those things are massive. I mean, the high-end Intel chips draw 300 watts, and the 4090 also draws over 300 watts. So you're drawing 600 watts. And these things will give you, now they may not match that performance. We'll find that out in a few weeks when the benchmarks start rolling in. I don't think they're going to match it, but they're going to get awfully close for a tiny fraction of the power consumption. In fact, so much less power consumption, and this was kind of buried in there, there's no difference if you're plugged in or not. It just works. You get the full power. Like I think the 14-inch MacBook Pros, you used to have to be plugged in to get full power, and that was because of thermal reasons. But they've solved, again, by drawing so much less power, they're generating so much less heat. And of course, the 16-inch will probably never overheat. Most people may never hear the fans come on at all. That's how little power it draws for what it's doing. It's just amazing. The marketing was amazing. They have aimed this directly at the customers they think will upgrade, and they're just, come on. And I think it's going to work. I think they're going to sell a lot of these. Now, I'm no prognosticator, and, interest rates are high and all that's going on, but you get so, especially coming from the Intel and the M1 MacBook Pros, it's such a huge leap in performance that I imagine they're going to suck up a lot of those. So that's kind of my analysis of the marketing. Oh, but wait, there's one more thing. I feel like Tim Cook. One more thing. At the very end, I don't know if you stayed to the end, but at the very end, they put up a card that said this event was shot entirely on iPhone 15. And I mean, there were drone shots, and I mean, they did a little behind the scenes video on YouTube. I'll link it down below, where they show, but wait, it doesn't look like an iPhone 15. It's in a rig with all this stuff because it's using the ProRes coming out onto the USB, and it looks like a professional camera. It's just instead of a camera in the middle, there's a little tiny iPhone 15. It's just amazing. Here's a fun fact, but they didn't use the camera app. Blackmagic Design, the makers of DaVinci Resolve, have a new app that just came out a couple of months ago. In fact, I've been meaning to do a video about it. I'm not enough of a camera guy to really explain it well, but it basically unlocks the camera in the iPhone and gives you the same amount of control you have over one of these kind of cameras. You can control everything separately. It's not all done for you automatically. So if you're a professional photographer, this Blackmagic camera app is simply amazing. And that's what Apple used. So Apple knows it's amazing. So I was really impressed with the whole thing. I was impressed with the camera work. I was impressed, especially finding out it was on an iPhone 15. It was just an amazing event, and it was short. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. If you stuck it out this far, you're going, well, wait, we know you. Which one did you buy? Or did you buy one? Are you new? Of course I bought one. And I'd tell you all about it, except look at the time. I guess you're just going to have to come back next week when I will tell you which one I bought, and I will go through my decision process and show you all the different configurations and why I picked the one I did and why you might want to pick a different one than the one I picked. I did not max it out, don't worry. But come back next week. So subscribe. Hey, there's a reason to hit the subscribe button. And then, if all goes well, the week after next will be the unboxing of my new MacBook Pro. So thanks for stopping by. Sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger, but hey, what they do on TV, YouTube's like TV. Wait, there's YouTube TV. See you next time. Yeah, I'm still waving, but my arm's getting tired because I'm thinking about my new MacBook Pro. Thanks for staying to the end. Bye-bye.